You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick. Thanks for joining us today. And today, it's going to be a fun one, I know. We have Debbie Champion joining us. She's going to tell us everything about her journey to becoming such a successful litigator, attorney in St. Louis, how you got here. And I'm afraid to even try to list all the awards that you have. Don't do it. I mean, like Attorney of the Year and this and that. And how we were introduced to each other was Tessa Greenspan,
That's right,
who recorded an episode already. And when I was talking to her about who would be great to have on the podcast, and your name was one of the first names that came up, she said she is underestimated in the courtroom. And she walks in with the accent and the personality, and then at the end of the case, walks out the winner. So I thought, well, how do we not have her on? So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
And we got the chance to, connect over a happy hour.
That's
just
right.
To say, okay, let's learn about each other more before we start this. And you really do have an interesting story because as you talk, people are going to realize that you're not from St. Louis.
Probably, although I've lost the accent.
Well, that's maybe slightly debatable. However, but your journey to St. Louis and to becoming an attorney here, which maybe we'll start with first, was not a straight line on how you got here. But litigator, type of attorney, almost anything, but really primarily in insurance. Is that fair to say?
Well, not just that. I do all defense, or primarily defense, although there are some plaintiff's cases that I will take every once in a while if I have time to do it. But I got my start in insurance defense, which means if you have an insurance policy and somebody falls at your house or on your property, or somebody falls in your store, or you have an auto accident and you have insurance to cover you, then I defended those people. And that's what I still do a lot of, although I've broadened significantly. But those are the ones that go to trial. So that's how I kind of cut my teeth on trial work.
And from what I've learned, not being in the legal business, not everybody's suited to be a trial.
That's right. And it's not that they're suited, they don't want to. It's just not what they want to do, which is frustrating sometimes to those of us who litigate because we don't, one, understand that. And two, you meet people who are perfect litigators and the litigators will look at each other and say, that's one of us. And then they go do corporate, because they really don't have the interest in doing it, even though they might be great at it.
So what makes someone have the interest in it or not? Or what is it that differentiates?
Oh, that's a really good point. Well, this is 2024, and there is a pendulum swing away from litigation. Used to be everybody thought lawyers were the people in trial, and it's broadened so much that lawyers can do a lot of different things. But lately, the last couple of years, I think law schools are having difficult times getting people to actually litigate and get in the courtroom. So it's becoming more rare to actually have somebody who gets in the courtroom. But there is no predictor as to who will like it and whether they will be good at it. No personality type. It used to be if people were outgoing and dramatic and
pounded their fist on it,
then we would think, oh yeah, they're going to be great in the courtroom. And now it can be somebody very numbers oriented, or somebody very computer oriented, or engineering type oriented, but much different than what we used to think the traditional thought was. Really, the whole issue is who can get a point or theme across to the jury and explain the evidence or the facts in a way the jury will believe and go your way versus the other. So it can be any personality type, really.
So it sounds like the biggest benefit or trait would be communication, storytelling in a way that others can easily understand.
Yeah, it is. It's really conveying your theme and belief about what the facts of the case compel you to do as a juror as you're following the judge's instructions. And so it's a lot more constrained than you might think, because I can tell a good story, but if they don't fit with the jury instructions, I'm in trouble.
So how did you know, or when, that you liked it, you were going to be good at it? Was it right out of the gate?
No. In fact, I was already in law school when I realized I should be going to law school. It really is true.
So wait a minute, back up. So I was already in law school when I figured out I should be going to law school. Tell me about that.
So, you think back when you were a little girl and think about all the things that you wanted to do through your life. And I never really had one that I wanted all my life, although I thought I would be a teacher. But it started early. When I was 3 years old, we had this little program in Paducah, Kentucky, which is where I'm from, and it was Popeye, and they had Captain Bob or somebody like that, and they would have little kids on, and so during the commercial break, they would interview you. Well, I was 3 or 4 years old, but I remember this, so I must have been 4. And they came to me, and they said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Well, I didn't know. Again, so I think as he's coming to me and coming down the aisle, I think, I know what I want to be. I want to be a fireman. And so as I'm thinking fireman, I thought, well, really what I want to do is drive the fire truck. So I remember this thought process going through my head, and he got to me and I said, I want to be a fire truck. So I've never been real good on communication, obviously, but it started, I think, when I was in grade school. I wanted to be a teacher. And so then as I went into high school, I took a class at the community college there and also in school in psychology, and I fell in love with it. And so I got my degree in psychology, and then I ran out of classes, and so I took another degree in criminal justice. I never understood these people who graduated early. I wanted to go the full time and have fun in college. And then I did a political science minor. I don't know, so maybe law was in the back of my mind at some point. But after that, I did a 2 years master's program, and I counseled people. And I learned that was not my strength, because I took it home every single day. And I don't do that with other things. I just don't. I'm one of those people who am able to cut it off and not take it home and not let it worry me. But I counseled a lot of kids, and it was not the thing that I decided I wanted to do the rest of my life. So I became interested in law school because I wanted to study juries. So I still wanted my psychology degree. I wanted my PhD in that. I wanted to study juries, and I thought it would help to get a law degree. So by a little circuitous route, I decided to look for those places where I could get that double degree, and there were 7 in the nation. And that's what brought me to St. Louis, because I went to WashU. They put a program together for me, and I was to do.
I like how you slipped that in. They put a program together for me.
They did. I got them all excited, and then I started law school the first year. And after about a week, I'm like, nope, this is where I need to be, and I never looked back. So that's how I got where I am.
So interesting. You mentioned that as a therapist or counseling, you would take that home with you, but as an attorney, not so. Do you think if you weren't in the insurance side of law and litigation, so when you said that, I thought, oh, she probably couldn't be a family law attorney then.
No, I've done that too. I've done it all. You name it, I've done it as far as law goes. And the difference is this. With psychology and counseling, I can't force them to do what I'm telling them to do. I mean, isn't that weird to say? But I have to rely on them to do it. And when you're counseling children, worse yet, you have to rely on the parents to do it. And sometimes the parents are the problem. And they're not in counseling, but should be the ones that should be in counseling. And so it was completely outside your control. And while you could help them for the hour or two they were there, the rest of the time, they're doing what they're going to do. And whether they get better or not depends on what they do, not on what I do. Which really frustrated me, because I must be a control freak. I just heard that. And I've heard people say that through my life, but I never really acknowledged it till just then. But with the law, it's different. They've already made the mistakes. Whatever mistakes or facts there are in a case, plaintiff side, defense side, whatever, those are there. it's fact now. And I take that fact and use it and show the jury why it was not negligence or why it was negligence, depending on the case. And what I'm doing with that is strategizing, not controlling. I'm strategizing how I need to present this stuff to the jury. So that's why I never took it home. No matter what the facts are, I didn't make those. And I don't have to fix those. I just have to communicate those to the jury in a way that makes them understand human behavior. So,
Which, having watched you put that program together specifically for you to understand the psychology of juries,
right,
has to be hugely impactful and helpful in what you do.
It has been very helpful. And I still love it. I mean, my favorite part is when you have, 40 to 60 people come in that courtroom, and I look at that group and I'm like, oh, here's 60 new friends I get to make today. And you just sit and listen to what people think and the conclusions they all draw from the same facts, and just generally how their experiences affect their outlook on things. And it just couldn't be more fun. Love it.
It's funny because I think those 60 people walking in are probably not thinking the same thing. They're like, oh, why am I here?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But I imagine your personality, so maybe two things here. One, we have this vision from TV.
Yeah.
What this whole process looks like. And I think you said some things already that it's not necessarily those that bang their,
right,
arms or hands on the table. There's that psychological part of it that you have to manage. So for those of us who know trials by the TV, what and how is it different?
Oh, it's dramatically different. First, it's way more boring. The day-to-day is way more boring. I tell everybody, I'll get calls and people say, what are you doing? And I'll say, I'm pushing paper from one side of the desk to the other, because that is what we do. There's an immense amount of paperwork. There's just a ton of paperwork. And that's so much of our day is that. And so it's fairly rare to be in trial. And when you are in trial, it is like you have written a stage play pretty much. And, you're orchestrating all of this witnesses and facts and exhibits and just all sorts of things. And when you actually go in the courtroom, it's hard to tell you what it's like because it depends on who's in the case. It's all different. There are those people you think of at some of the law shows that we've all seen. And they're out there because people have seen that when they were little and they emulate that. And they don't necessarily change it. Sometimes they're very aggressive. Sometimes they're complete pushovers. Sometimes, and sadly, sometimes you go into a courtroom and you watch two attorneys and they don't have the first clue about what they're doing there. And that's going to become more and more common, which we'll probably talk about. But it can be anything. People always say to me, my friends from high school or from college, they say, I would love to come see you in trial. And I said, you see me in trial every day. It's just like this. It's just me. It doesn't change. In my mind, there's no persona. It's just me. It's just me being silly in a courtroom. And I laugh a lot and laugh easily. If it's a bad case, there's not a lot to laugh about. But you know what I mean? If it's somebody's really badly injured or there's a really serious issue there, you don't get to laugh as much as otherwise. But it's just people being themselves for the most part, because I think those people are the most successful. The ones you see most of the time are the ones who are the most successful, and those are the ones who just are whoever they are, whether it's slow and deliberate or whether it's quick and sitting back down. It's just, you see a lot of variety.
So it sounds like being an attorney, I'm thinking like in life, to be successful, do it as you would do it.
Absolutely. Authenticity is one of the top things a jury can read.
Interesting. It definitely overlays. So tell me. There we go. That's weird. I guess we need to move both sides. Didn't this happen? Yeah. Okay, we'll restart. So tell me about your first time entering the courtroom or your first trial, whatever.
This always happens. I don't know why it always happens that you get ready to go to trial and it cancels. You get ready to go to trial again, it cancels. It gets continued, it gets settled, whatever. So it's it's sometimes hard to look back to remember the actual first one because you have gotten geared up and you put on the armor and you're ready to go, and then you have to go back home and take it all off and get back to normal. But I remember one of those where I didn't actually go to trial, but I thought I was going. And I had been in, I worked at Evans and Dixon when I first started. It was a humongous litigation force back then. And I went into a coworker's office and he had a file sitting there. I said, "What you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I got to go try this case. It's been hanging around here for years. It's not a big case, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Let me try it." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you want to try it?" I said, "I absolutely want to try it." And so I got all ready for it. I went out to the court and my client was there. We were ready to go and she was not at fault and we were going to win that case. And I went back and the judge was there and these other two senior male attorneys. And I thought, oh, they are going to kill me. They're going to kill me. I don't know what I'm doing. They're just going to kill me. And so I sat down and the judge started reading the petition and telling me everything my client did wrong. But the facts were not, the petition is just to get in the door of the courtroom. It doesn't say truth or false. You have to prove it. So he says, "Oh, well, your client did this, your client did this." And I said, "Judge, I could read you my answer where we said, no, we didn't do that. But the fact of the matter is my client's not at fault. And so we're ready to go." He said, "Well, I'd really like for you to settle it." And I said, "I can't settle it. This case has been around forever. We've spent a lot of money on defending it. We need to," and I didn't say, "And it's my first trial." I didn't say that, but of course I was thinking it, and I thought he won't be happy if he thinks I'm not settling this case because it's my first trial. So he keeps beating on me about it, and I thought, well, this is unusual, but whatever, I'm ready to try the case. And I just kept nicely saying, well, I'm ready to try the case. He looked at the two senior attorneys, and he said, "Sorry, guys, I can't get her to give in." The plaintiffs didn't show up, so it was going to be dismissed. They didn't tell me that. They just faked it and said, let's take her and we can knuckle her under, I'm sure, and she'll give in and we'll get this case settled. But that didn't happen. So that was the first time I got ready really to go to trial. And my first time in trial, oh gosh, dog, you think you know what you're doing when you go and you don't. And I think my very first trial, I think back and I come up with a different, I forget sometimes which one was actually the first, but the actual first was in the city of St. Louis, and it was with a man who was old even at that time, and he was the most gentlemanly opponent I could ever have had. And he was trying a case for his cousin or brother or somebody, and his name was Richard Dempsey. He was from Franklin County, and I loved him. Dick Dempsey. He's gone now, but he was a great mentor to me through my career, especially on how to act when things are stressful, because he was always such a good gentleman. Anyway, it was funny, and he knew he couldn't make his case because he didn't have an expert witness, but I was too stupid to know that. So we tried the case. We picked a jury. We had a great time. Halfway through, you file at the end of the plaintiff's case, you file a motion saying he didn't prove his case and here's why, and I did that. And the judges rarely grant those because you've got a jury in the box. Why not just let them decide? You could always take it away later. So we had a jury in the box, and the judge said, "Yeah, I'm going to let this go ahead and go to the jury." And Dick Dempsey said, "Judge, she's right." He said, "You got to just dismiss it because I didn't prove my case." It was the funniest thing. And so they did. And so I was always able to say I won my first case, not because the judge granted it, but because the other attorney just said, "Oh, yeah, never mind. I'm going home." It was really
that has
funny.
To be.
It was a great way to start a career.
Yeah, after that, you're like, all right, this is how these go. Okay.
That's right. That's right. It took me a couple years to realize, though, that didn't ever happen again.
I was going to say, that has to be so abnormal.
It was really unusual.
Like, how? Why? Was it you were magical, or he just said?
I have a feeling because he was representing somebody he was related to, he had had enough of it. He knew they didn't really have much of a claim. And so I think that was it. I never really understood it, but I think he knew it just was not a good case. And he thought, I don't know what he thought. Maybe he thought I would show up with some money to settle it, but I didn't have any money to settle it. So we couldn't settle it. But he was a great man. And I thought it was very ethical, I think, for him to say, she's right. I didn't prove what I needed to prove. And I don't want to waste any more of everybody's time. It was great.
And what's interesting there is you said he became a longtime mentor. So somebody may walk in and think that's the enemy.
Absolutely. That happens all the time. That happens all the time. But I'll tell you, it's interesting with litigators. They are, it's really with those, especially those long-term older litigators. You don't have to be friends with the other people who are trying cases, but you do have to, you're part of the same fraternity. And you're the people who are going in and getting your nose bloodied. You're the ones who are going in and getting the dirt on your face because you're fighting the fight. And so you have some respect for the other people who are doing that too, because it ain't easy.
Right. When I think about, any industry, and this podcast is really for anybody, but also women, finding, whether it's at your company or not, a mentor that's in the same industry.
Yeah.
You're fighting the same things.
That's right.
Why not find that mentor, support person, even if they are potentially at a competitor?
That's right. Oh, it happens all the time. And or an opposition. It could be a competitor, meaning I do mostly defense, so it could be somebody from another defense firm. But it also, and probably in my life, it's more common to find it on the other side of the aisle.
I want to go back to that story you mentioned where the judge said, "Sorry, guys, I couldn't get her to."
Yeah.
Why do you think, one, is that story normal? Or two, if it's not, why did they, was it you? Was it just the case? Did they know you were coming? Like, why? That just seems a little like,
it left a bad taste in my mouth. It always has for the last 30-something years. It's left a bad taste in my mouth. It is not normal. But what happened, I think, is they didn't know I was going to appear. They thought the other guy was going to appear. But when I appeared, it was easy. They thought, okay, female, obviously right out of law school, probably never even been in a courtroom, much less tried the case, which was true. It was true. I mean, I was brand new. And they thought, well, this is going to be easy. And so I think that was all of those things. I think that's exactly what happened. And I don't see that happening in 2024 at all. Not just because of the female thing. I don't see that happening at all. But I don't think a new lawyer would be given that treatment at this point in time. I think I just got lucky. And it taught me a lesson. Don't back down if you don't need to back down.
Right. And I think that you kind of carried that through your whole life and career. So if we think about little 4-year-old being a fire truck in Kentucky... I love that. I would do the same thing. I've been in situations where I thought we're thinking a million things and it just slams you.
That's right.
Your background, right? Your parents weren't, attorneys.
Right.
They weren't professors or really, and I'll let you tell the story. I mean, you learned a lot about being a business person, business owner, and that from them, but it wasn't, I think if somebody had looked back at you at Little Debbie, that sounds like a cake snack. Little Debbie, they would know that you would be this hugely successful attorney.
Oh, I was so shy when I was little. I was so shy. And no, everybody, I don't know what people thought of me. They probably would have thought when I was little and probably even up through mid-high school that I would be lucky to get a job I could hold on to. When I graduated from high school. But you're right. My parents were the type of people who put certain pressures on us, but not like other parents I know. My parents taught us how to get through life, like the life's lessons, not homework lessons. My parents both graduated from high school, but my mother was a beautician and she had a beauty shop that she owned. So she was a business owner. It was the biggest beauty shop between Nashville and St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
And so that was great and a big accomplishment. And she worked really, really hard. And my father graduated from high school, went to World War II, came back and decided he wanted to go to barber school, which he failed at miserably. He was terrible at that. So he got on with this manufacturing company in Paducah where he made radiators, for GM cars. And he worked really, really hard. I remember him telling us that he would sometimes work in, for some reason, water like a foot tall. They'd have to work in all day long on an assembly line. And so these were people who understood right from wrong, and they understood morals, and they understood how to get through life and what to make good decisions in life. But they, we were responsible for our own homework, and education was kind of our own field. They supported it and they wanted us to be smart, but they weren't really equipped with the time or the methods to help us with that. So I guess the point I'm making is my parents taught me the things that I needed them to teach me, and my teachers taught me the things that they needed to teach me.
What do you think is one of the biggest or lessons from your parents?
Oh, gosh, there are tons. I have this whole PowerPoint thing with my mother about my mother was 95 when she died last July. And my mother taught me so many things about business. So when you don't think about lawyers who run their own law firms as being business people, but they are. And we're terrible business people because nobody's ever been in business. We just like to practice law. And in particular, I'm a terrible business person, but there are certain things I know. And one thing she taught me was, people come to you because, as a client, because you make them feel better about themselves. And so one of the ways to do that is figure out what they want and serve them. You're never too big for your britches. You need to serve people. And if you make yourself helpful to them, then they become your friend and not just your client. That's a big thing that I have done in business. And another thing she taught me to do, which is the exact opposite of what we're doing here today, is don't talk about yourself. Nobody wants to hear about you. That's boring. They want to tell you about themselves. So I'm really tempted to ask you a bunch of questions today.
No. That's kind of why I like sitting in this seat. I don't have to worry about answering. I could just ask a few questions and push it back.
She used to say, nobody wants to be bored by you. So they want to entertain you. Let them entertain you.
That's true. I mean, we'll go places, and my husband's much better at this than I am, but he'll just ask questions, and be like, you are the best person to talk to. You're the best conversationalist. And
he draws people out.
They know nothing about him, which may be safe for them. I don't know. Just kidding. But he's just amazing at going deep to places where most people
And he likes that.
Oh, 100%.
That's same here. I love hearing about other people. And people generally like telling you about themselves. So it is a good thing.
They do. And that's what I've loved about this. Something you said earlier is like, that's the first time I really connected that or thought about that. And I'm like, yes, good question. And so you go from, the other thing, parent of 3, I think us working so much by just sheer what can we accomplish, we've had to let our children take responsibility for a lot more in their lives.
Right.
And it's almost like whether you're a parent in that situation and or you're running a team, let them.
Absolutely. Ooh, that's a really good point. Absolutely right.
Let them be good at what they're good at, take responsibility, don't hover. And
that's a hard lesson to learn too with as a parent probably, and certainly as a boss of a team where you've got clients calling if it doesn't go right.
Right. So as an attorney, you said they're not good at the business side of it.
We are almost universally terrible at business. It's true because, we don't learn that at law school. You don't learn any business at law school. What you learn is how to practice law. And so regardless of what you're doing, whether it's estate planning or family law or litigation or corporate, you don't know about how to set up businesses. Generally, some people got an MBA at the same time they got their law degree. They're probably better. But that's interesting that you mentioned that too, because I met Tessa through something called Women's Presidents Organization. And it is a group of people who are women owners, presidents, or officers of corporations that achieve at a certain financial level. And they act as kind of advisors to each other about how to increase your business and how to, on the bottom line, how to do better, how to cut expenses, how to do this, that, and the other. It's fantastic to find something like that if you're a business owner who does not know how to run a business.
So almost put together, whether it's through a organized community or your own board of advisors.
Absolutely. That's right.
Find those who can fill in the gaps.
That's right. And with doctors or lawyers or other different types of professionals where you learn, where you're doing one thing as your practice and your profession, but you've got to run a business to do it. Those are great informal advisory groups are great to have because you have people with so many different perspectives. We would have a non-competitive group, so we would have a florist and a doctor and a lawyer and an accountant and somebody who does financial planning and somebody who does this, that, and the other. It's all varied, and it's great to get those different perspectives.
So that's a good advice for people out there who maybe aren't a part of an organization. You certainly could go out and build a group yourself.
Absolutely.
With the benefit of learning, because any of those, I think in general, even if you have a business degree, you're not necessarily probably taught to, all of the pieces that go into being a boss,
right,
a manager, leader, business owner.
You may be great at the numbers, but terrible at the people, or vice versa.
And the strategy and the vision.
Right.
And so in all of those cases, bringing in those people that have experience and or expertise in that, or finding, what do I need to learn? Where are my gaps?
Right. That's right. And even learning what the gaps are that you have. Not even how to fix it, just here is something I need to work on in some way.
Yeah, being self-aware. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that I've listened to and I share is about leadership and that sort of thing. And most people, it's not innate. It's not taught anywhere other than real life on the job training.
Right.
And so too would be probably running your own business and the vision statements, mission statements, all of the
right. That's right. I laugh thinking back at my mother's beauty shop where, okay, yeah, that was a business, but it was a very different business. I may have told you this before, but my mother gave away more than she ever brought in. She just was one of those people who, if somebody needed something, she would give it to them. And I remember there were these women who would come in who could not afford. This is back in the 70s when there was a lot of inflation. People weren't having an easy time of it. And the government was giving away cheese and eggs and milk and that sort of thing. And there's this woman who would come in and my mother would do her hair and then she would say, well, I don't have the money this time, but I'll bring it next time. Then she would come up with a big old block of cheese, government cheese. And that's how she would pay my mother. Some, at least in part. And it took me forever to realize that was government cheese. I thought it was really fancy cheese because we loved it. And I said, my memory is saltine crackers and government cheese. And I thought that was fancy. But in the bigger picture, my mother was a giver and her position was always, my business will run and I will do just fine and I will have profit and I will have assets if I give away enough to deserve those. That was kind of how she did it. Well, in 2024, that may not be a good business model, but in the 1970s for her in a beauty shop, it was great.
Well, but I think the concept is there, right? Be that giver.
Right.
Of whatever it might be,
right.
Positive energy or knowledge, it will come
That's
back.
exactly
Did you, sounds like you have that, you use that. Did you realize it back then, or is it just something you can say looking back, oh, that makes sense?
No, we realized it back then. She was always big on that. She would tell us this sort of thing. Like my mother would give away $20, which in the 70s was a lot. And then she would come home and she would put a coat on and put her hand in the pocket and there was $20. So she would always make that a lesson for us, that whatever you give somehow comes back to you. And so that was a big focus of our life. We knew, and you don't give for it to come back because it may be decades before it comes back, but she would, and that happened all the time to her. Whatever she gave, it would come back. We had a big garden outside and she would take it and give it to people, and then somebody would come to us and have meat, or they would give steaks to her for whatever reason. They had this and they were going to move and they couldn't, whatever. It was always coming back.
So I'm not sure whether, wow, what a coincidence, $20 in her pocket, or was she a genius and put it there, planted it, and at the right time when you are all there, she's like, look what I got back.
That's
See, listen
true.
to your mother, lesson learned.
That's a good question, and that my mother might do that.
And now I'm thinking about my own parenting techniques.
Yeah, she would easily do that. That's funny.
Well, it just having these stories, I think, wow, Debbie's just Debbie, as you talked about. She's just genuine. So talk to me about, you went to that first, whether it was your first case or your first time in, that they wanted to try to steamroll you, to your experience and where you're at today, because I think we talked about how in a trial, well, let's even go to the jury, because there's a joke and actually I think you recently did a video, we won't spoil it, but there's that just how you get the jury, I don't know if the right words are on your side, but how you end up relating to them to where they like you as an attorney in such a short amount of time.
I know it's really lucky. I don't really know how I do it, but as a litigator, I always tell everybody, you start out, you really don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're doing it. You just try to do what other people have done, and you're sick one way or the other. I always tell young litigators, you are going to be a crier, a puker, or a pooper, because you're, and sometimes all three. And so you're just trying to not throw up in front of the jury when when it all starts. And I finally thought, I don't care. Maybe I'll make a fool out of myself. I don't care. I just want to get to know what these people and try to get these people to really tell me the truth. And so I will just talk to them, and I don't talk at them ever. I don't care that they know what I think or what I mean? There's nothing about what I think that is relevant to that juror. What I'm trying to figure out is this somebody who will listen to my argument and give my client a fair trial? Maybe not vote for me, but at least not try to hurt me. And so it's just been really interesting because I treat them the way I treat whoever I would meet on the street. And I think that's a big difference. I think people think they're some sort of mystery, instead of just people who got some big hook wrapped around them and pulled into the courtroom where they don't want to be, and they've got a million pressures and a lot of other places they'd rather be, and they really don't want to be there. And it's always a fun story. I mean, jurors are fun. It's just fun to learn about people. And I can't tell you the number of times they'll call me the next day, or I'll see somebody on the street and they'll come up and say, I don't remember your name, but I had a trial with you, and they remember. And so it kind of makes jury selection fun to me. Everybody else hates it, but I love it. I love it.
Well, that relates to life too.
Yeah.
Don't talk at people, don't talk down to people, get to know them. What is it about them that, people want to talk about themselves?
Yeah, they do.
And so being successful as an attorney and a litigator sounds a lot like being successful in life. Don't kind of sit on that, I don't know, higher plane of I have all this knowledge.
Yeah. And there are some people who do that, but it's also like, it's funny. Last night I was talking to a videographer who is going down to a small town to start a case today for an attorney. And I said to him, you don't want to be in the hotel all week. You're going to be bored with that. This is a small town. This is what's going to happen. You go and have dinner, sit by yourself. In a little while, people will come over to try to figure out who you are, and while you're there, you'll make all kinds of good friends. And so he's a young kid, and I said, now, when you come back next week, I want to hear about 3 people that you made new friends from. So that's just how I am. I mean, I was really shy as a kid. I'm not so shy anymore, but I just think that makes life fun, meeting new people, and that's how I look at jurors.
Well, it sounds like going back to your parents taught you just about life, not necessarily the books.
Right.
And here you are sharing that with him. And it is a good lesson. You could stay in a room, a hotel, all by yourself, not put yourself out there, but you're not going to get much from that if you do.
That's right. And it's kind of just a life of loneliness. When you have to do a lot of traveling to do that stuff, it gets lonely. You're nervous to begin with because he's young and new and he's afraid he's going to mess something up. And so you just got to go have some fun when you can have some fun, especially as lawyers.
Let go of the fear and have some fun you can have some fun.
That's right. That's right.
But it's easy to hear this story, but I'm thinking, in a jury, you've got all these new people. How do you make it different than other attorneys in that you're both in that same situation? How do you make it different?
It's hard for me to say because I know that people think it's different, but to me it's just normal. I mean, I do tell a couple stories. One thing I always do that they get a kick out of is I tell a couple jokes that are real things. Like, it's really important, especially if you're in a small town, that your jurors don't know each other. And the reason for, or at least don't know each other well, because the reason for that is people don't want to lose a friend by following what they think should happen in a jury when they really strongly believe it should happen. So the stronger of the two will win, and that person will vote on their side, even though they don't believe it. And I need them to vote the way they believe. And so I always tell this story while they're looking around and trying to get to know each other about this jury I had. And this is a true story. It happened in Crawford County, and there was a young man, nice-looking guy, and I forgot what he did for a living. And then I asked this question, does anybody here know anybody else on the jury? You related to anybody else here, know anybody else here? And a few hands went up, but in particular, I called on him first. And he said, that's my mother-in-law over there on seat number 3. And so I went to her first, and I said, Miss So-and-so, your son-in-law is juror number so-and-so. If he gets in the top 12 with you and you heard the evidence in this case, would his opinion about the evidence sway you? In other words, is he going to be, you going to kind of vote your own ideas, or are you going to be swayed by what he tells you to do? And she said, oh, I absolutely would vote my own ideas. And I went back to him and I said, Mr. So-and-so, your mother-in-law will be independent. Will you vote your own ideas, or if she has a way she wants you to vote, will you change it? And he said, I will do whatever she tells me, whenever she tells me, however she tells me. It was really funny. And so they always laugh about that. They think that's funny, and they get then why it's important to let me know. So I don't know, just that sort of thing. It's not all, it's just, I just try to make them laugh.
How'd you learn about that? Was that back from your WashU days?
No, I think it's just natural to me. I think it's just, what can I say to this jury to relax them and make them laugh without belittling what's going on, because it's important. If we're there in a case, it's an important case to people in that courtroom. So you got to be really careful about walking that line, because you don't want to be glib.
And I have to imagine, obviously you said it's a skit, right? It's a story, it's a play, everything that you've done, you're pushing papers.
Right.
But that jury selection has to be pretty critical.
Absolutely. It's like you're picking the decider of your case. And, you don't know these people from Adam. You don't know what their history has been. You don't know what their political beliefs are. You don't know what their religious beliefs are. You don't know any of that stuff. And sometimes that becomes hilarious because of things that happen in the courtroom, and you really quickly learn what somebody's beliefs are. But
do you have an example? Like, because you're
I do have an example. I won't tell names, but we were down. I was really worried about this case. It was a death case, and my client didn't cause it. It was just, somebody fell off of a roof, in essence. And so they sued my client, and we were in this courtroom, and it was a big issue, big sad case. It was nothing you could do. And sometimes lawyers go a little too far in argument, and you get lost. You can see, I should pull it back here because I'm going where I shouldn't go. So we had a jury, and I worried about the jury because they weren't well educated. This was a complicated engineering matter. I was very worried about the jury, but they were so freaking smart. I mean, they were smart. This jury was smart. They understood it all immediately. They knew within the first 30 minutes, but you don't know that while it's going on. So we are listening to the closing argument of the plaintiff, and there are 12 jurors, and I am kind of behind and beside the plaintiff who's arguing, and he got lost, and he started talking about people from that area and how they don't do well, and we don't have many good people from this area. Well, you're talking to 12 people who are from that area, and I'm thinking, what is he thinking?
Where is he going?
I mean, these people, what are you talking about? And you could tell they're all looking around. They look at me, and I went and kind of did that confused look. And then he said, well, now, wait a minute, because he could see they're uncomfortable. He said, wait a minute. I'm not talking about him walking on water. Only one person ever did that, and all 12 heads turned to me. I mean, what do you do? So I kind of just nodded, like, keep going, like just nodded. And they turned all 12 heads back to him, and he said, and he's not here, he's dead. And they all looked at me, and I thought, we are in the Bible Belt. These people are looking to me to see if I think God is dead. Jesus is dead. And I shook my head. I'm like, and they all 12 turned back. It was the funniest thing. Not because of the topic or the case, but because the guy got lost and he's saying things without thinking about what you're saying to this jury in the Bible Belt. And the jury understands he's lost, but they want to make sure I'm not agreeing with what he's saying. And so, you know, one of my associate was with me, leaned over and said, "Debbie, are you talking to the jury?" I said, "I can't help it. They all keep looking at me." It was really funny. But the bottom line is I knew immediately what they were thinking. I'm from Paducah, Kentucky. I know immediately what they're all thinking. And I know they want to be offended by it, but they also knew he didn't mean anything he was saying. He was lost. He was trying to get his way back to the argument because he had veered off in a way he shouldn't have. And they got that, but they just, they were just holding me accountable too. It was really funny. So there are things people do that make you know exactly what they're thinking through the voir dire and also sometimes through the trial. I'll tell this real quick, and that is I had a vet in a trial, Vietnam vet, and I had an expert who was a Marine. And I really struggled with whether to bring up the fact that he was a Marine because I thought it would look like I was pandering to the vet. And it really didn't have a whole lot to do with anything. And I struggled with it the night before, and I called the expert, and I said, "I'm not going to bring up that you're a Marine because there's a guy on there who's a vet. It means a lot to him to be a vet. He talks about it all the time. And if I march you up there and talk about your Marine history, which has nothing to do with this case, it's going to look to the other jurors and to him like I'm trying to get his vote. I'm not going to ask you about it." So it didn't matter. Because the vet knows the vet. They know each other by looking at them. So they're sitting there and my expert testified. And I had to get it recross him and my back was to the jury. Which I rarely do, but because of the way I was setting, my back was to the jury at least a little bit when I finished. And I turned around to go sit down. And the one vet in the jury, as my guy's getting up, yelled really loud, "Oorah," really loud. And I jumped. But I thought, well, we know where he said. We know where he stands. It was really funny. And so you just have to look for that sort of thing. Those are two obvious things that occurred. But if you talk to people about what they think about things, you will read who they are. And people just don't try to read it. They want an answer they're looking for, and then they don't want them. But they need to, in my opinion, what we need to do more is figure out who these people are and make sure they're fair.
Is that one of your superpowers in being so successful?
Yeah. That's probably the only thing I could do. I can say that I have as a superpower.
Well, relating to people, reading them, and that background in psychology of juries?
That's exactly what did it. I mean, the background in psychology is exactly what taught me. Well, actually, I think it was counseling. I think when I did counseling. And so many times you have to fill in the blanks. And so I think that's for sure what has helped me fill in the blanks with jurors. You may see somebody come in there and they maybe dressed with long curly hair and blue eyeshadow and crazy nails and have a skirt down to their ankles and look very hippie-ish. But if their dad was an accountant, they're going to be conservative. You know what I mean? You can't look at somebody and draw conclusions about them. You have to talk to them. You have to get into their head.
And so when I talked with a person who knows us both, she said that she feels you're often underestimated when you walk into that courtroom.
Yeah.
And you have, I think when we spoke over the time of a trial, that you, I don't know, pace yourself or you add a little bit more over time. So I guess
I know what she's talking about.
Do you feel like you are underestimated? And if so, why? And does that help you?
I definitely think that I've made a career on being underestimated.
So you made a career on being it. So is that intentional?
Yeah, a little bit. It didn't start off that way, but as it continued to happen, and I could get away with things with lawyers because they didn't expect me to have the knowledge to pull it off, then I did cultivate that. Yes, that cat's out of the bag, though. That I don't get underestimated much anymore, except by the jurors, maybe by the jurors. But as far as, the other lawyers, they know it's just, it's not just a shtick. It's just my shtick. It's just how I am. But I do think that for decades, people would come in there and just roll their eyes and think, oh, this bumpkin, we'll fool her. And how jurors underestimate me is that they also think when they first hear me and they first meet me, she's probably not the smartest one in the room. But that's okay, because when have you ever made friends by thinking they're the smartest one in the room? You know what I mean? So I have made a career on being underestimated, which is okay with me. In fact, a friend of mine from New York sent me a little thing on my desk. It said, "Underestimate me, that's going to be fun." So I have it on my desk. But,
so it's almost as if, again, you can't control everything, but you can't control what other people think about you.
Right.
And maybe flip it and say, how do I use this as a tool?
Yeah, you know how everybody always talks about how important first impressions are. Well, that's not been the case with me, because I think people think something different about me when we leave each other than they think when we meet each other. So it's kind of been the exception. And, I have kind of been the exception to a lot of rules regarding litigators. But mostly it's because I just love it. I just really enjoy what I do for a living. I remember during COVID, we went into lockdown, and after about 6 weeks, I started dreaming about trials, and not in general ways, specifically how I'm going to get this piece of evidence in. I would dream about it like I was awake, like I would do if I was awake and actually getting ready for trial. So I just like it.
So your COVID experience was different from others because you couldn't go into a courtroom and do what you love.
I know. Isn't that weird? Yeah. We worked every single day, but we weren't able to go into a courtroom.
Well, if I remember right, when we got together, part of that is, I won't say by design, but you maybe start a court case a little bit more reserved, pulled back, whether it's appearance or anything else, and kind of layer in more of Debbie along the way.
Yeah. So I always start conservatively. You'll wear a black suit for the first day and you dress traditionally like lawyers normally dress. But if I have a really long case, it gets wilder as we go. And like you can see, for example, like I have these earrings on. Like, who wears these earrings to court? So these are vintage earrings, and I have this huge vintage jewelry collection. And so it depends on who's on my jewelry. If I have a bunch of men on my jewelry, they could not care less about my vintage jewelry collection. Pro or con, don't care, not looking at you anyway.
They're not even noticing.
No, they don't care about that. They don't care what I have on. They really do not. Women, on the other hand, you know how women are. We all know what each other has on, and the first thing I said to you today is how cute your shoes were and how pretty you are.
And I noticed the blue when you came.
But women watch, and so I will get a little wilder each day on clothing, louder, and jewelry. And I can't tell you the number of times women come up to me and talk about my jewelry. They just think that's so fun to watch for. And it's not expensive jewelry. Now that you don't want to do. I don't wear rings in trial. I don't wear fancy watches. I don't wear fancy jewelry. It's costumey jewelry, and the men, again, couldn't care less about it in general, but the women, they think it's fun. So
interesting. Again, another layer of really knowing other people and servicing what they're interested in.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned, and catering to what they're interested in, not in a manipulative way, but in a way of, here's who I am. Now, how does that go together?
Right. Just, I'm trying to entertain them the whole time.
Which
some way or the
other. Seems to naturally suit your personality. What are some things, well, maybe before we do that, I guess I made an assumption on the Bible case. Did you win?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I don't think it was because of that, because I told you later, one of those jurors contacted me afterwards, and he said when the jury was out, they had pizza or something. There's something to eat, and that they sat back there for 40 minutes eating, but they had a verdict in 2. He said we knew what the verdict was, but you all had gone on so long, we just decided we would go ahead and eat our pizza. So I tell you, you cannot underestimate people. We had primarily a male jury, and they were almost all blue collar. And what I wanted was, or some of them were self-employed as various things, very low-level jobs. They were the smartest group of men I think I've ever seen not to have gone one day to college. None of them. And they immediately, way before the experts testified, they figured it out. They knew what went wrong. They knew why this man fell. They completely got it. You can't, these people are so much smarter than we give them credit for. We want to control it. Well, I can't control how smart or how logical somebody is. But boy, oh boy, they were smart. Anyway, we did win it. But you learn more from the ones you lose than you do the ones you win.
Why do you think that's the case?
Because let me tell you something. If I go through trial and I do everything wrong and I win it, then I think I did everything right. But if I go through trial and I lose it, I go back through and think, what did I do wrong? So I improve myself with every loss. So not that I want to lose more.
Right, that's not what we're saying here.
But I think the losses have been the biggest improvements in my abilities.
So I think of in life and mindset that failure, oftentimes, don't be afraid of it.
Right. Well, it's not just that it motivates you. Failure does motivate you because you want to overcome, but failure teaches you. It allows you to open your mind enough to realize you weren't always completely right to begin with. Because that's just a natural belief we have. Oh, no, I'm doing this way. Because if you thought it was wrong, you wouldn't be doing it that way to begin with. But you might be wrong. And so you don't know it if you win. You only know it if you lose.
Picking up on all these interesting things about the different jurors and telling those stories, and you're successful. Do the attorneys you go up against pick up on these things too?
I don't know. That's a really good question. They tease me about certain things. They think I'm yucking it up with the jurors and stuff like that. So they definitely think it's different. I was going to say weird. They definitely think it's different. We did this little skit for this upcoming program, and so there were people that they were interviewing that gave quotes about me and about somebody trying a case against me, and one of them said, "She will make your client say the stupidest thing they've ever said." So I do think they think that I will do crazy things. But mostly I think it's just the difference in personality. And the accent does help. It does help. It just disarms people sometimes. If I were in Paducah, Kentucky, it wouldn't make any difference at all. I would be worthless.
So was that just a joke, or do you really get their clients or whoever to say the stupidest thing?
I think it was a joke, but there have been some times when, the hardest lesson to learn is when somebody is fighting you, is to give in to the jury. That's a hard lesson to learn, but it makes them look foolish every time. So not too long ago, I had this witness, and I don't know if she was crazy. I think she might have been, but she was definitely dramatic. And so it was the spouse of a plaintiff, and she was the worst witness I've ever seen in my life. And all she wanted to do is fight. And so I decided, well, I can look like a complete witch and fight with her, which the jury ain't going to like. And they see already what the problems are with her. So I should sit down, but I just couldn't. And so I kept asking her questions and I just couldn't sit down. I don't know why I didn't just sit down and leave it alone. But I just kept going, and she just kept being mean and kept being mean and kept being mean. And finally, I said the goofiest thing, but complimented her, and the jurors started laughing. Of course, they're laughing at me, but they're laughing because of the absurdity, too, about this entire exchange we've had. There was something wrong with her. But anyway, it was funny. I don't even know what I was trying to say on that one, but
well, that's so you had said I should have sat down, but I didn't, because we were talking about how you might have the ability to get people to say stupid things. Looking back, was it good that you stayed up and into it?
Yes.
Because if you sat down like you should have, maybe the outcome's different.
No, I don't think the outcome would have been different. The judge probably would have appreciated me shutting up and sitting down. They always do. They want you to cut it short. But no, the jury got a kick out of it because of how absurd she got. And I don't want to go into too much detail because if somebody hears this, they might recognize themselves. But she was complaining about what her spouse could no longer do. And they were such goofy things that, I mean, the person still had a very strenuous job every day. And it was stuff like, well, sometimes I have to cut up a steak for him. That was not what she said, but something like that. And so people are like, oh, come on. She would just take it over and over, make it over and over and over and over and over, just more and more absurd. And so the jury got a good dose of that, but maybe in retrospect, I didn't have to keep feeding them more of it. I could have just let it go. I have trouble with that editing.
Trouble with that editing.
They called me, though. 11 of those 12 jurors called me the next day. And when the case was over, it wasn't the next day, but when the case was over, and they all talked about her, and they all talked about the things that she ruined their case in essence. I don't know what she was trying to get away with, and I don't know what she was doing. One of the things, I don't even want to go into it, but she also was very defensive of her children, and she just was a terrible witness. And so they wanted to talk about that. Jurors are smart. And remember too, when you're arguing to 12 people, I want all 12 of them to hear it and all 12 of them to get it, but that's not really necessary. It's only necessary that one of them who's going to tell the others caught it. And so on this one, all 12 of them caught it, but that's the hardest thing, to stop yourself because the other 11 are really sick of hearing it and you want that 12th one to get it, but they don't have to. That's what's beautiful about our jury system.
So I think about your successful career over time. Are there moments, you talked about the failures are the ones you've learned the most about, failures or obstacles that you can think of that came up, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, it's, first of all, if you are trying cases, you're going to lose some. And so I always ask myself when the jury goes out, is there anything I would have done differently if I could have? And sometimes the answer is yes. And you think about what you would have done differently. And I always take notes while the jury's out as to what I wish I had changed. Because when the jury comes back, and if you win, you don't want to change anything. And so you don't learn from that. And so I try to do that while the jury's out. But I have had some huge losses. And one of my partners had a loss a couple weeks ago. And I kind of have this reputation of being one of those people who says when somebody gets hurt, just rub some dirt on it, it'll be okay. And so I guess I did that to him at this point. But I said, he wrote and told us about what happened. And I said, I don't celebrate my wins and I don't commiserate with losses. This is what we are here to do. We are here to continue to fight. You go home, worry about it today. Don't ever think about it again. You will get bigger cases tomorrow. And I got that from a client of mine, my big, huge loss. I had a big, huge loss when I was, a couple decades ago. And I've had 2 of those big losses that I can think about. But the first one that came out, my client was in the room, and she turned to me when the verdict came in. And we knew they wouldn't hold the whole verdict. We knew it wouldn't end up that bad, but it was still going to end up bad. And she looked at me and she said, well, 2 things are going to happen tomorrow. I said, what? And she said, I'm going to get a promotion and you're going to get bigger cases. And that is exactly what happened. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Why is that?
What happens with the lawyers is if you've lost big, they know you're not scared to try the case. And so you can handle and you know how to try a big case. And so that's what happens. And for her, same thing. You handled this huge case. It was a loss, but you handled a huge case, and so we're promoting you. She was promoted and promoted again. She ended up rising to the top. It was crazy. But I never knew that would happen. I never thought that would happen, and it has. It has.
But was it that client or the other client? You said you lost 2 big cases where it was, I don't celebrate my wins, and I don't commiserate the losses.
Yeah, I just said that. I said that to him, that's just something I had learned.
Okay.
I have learned that. Like, people, I can be snippy. And that's one of the things I'm snippy about. People go and they win. And, what that means is you've beaten somebody who really, really, really wanted to win. If you've read that Mark Twain's war prayer, it always makes me think about litigators, because if you're praying to win, you're praying somebody else is going to get hurt. You're praying somebody else is going to die. Somebody else is going to lose the case. And so that's what happens in litigation. And they may be wrong, but you don't have to celebrate that. And so when I win, I don't go out and have happy. I don't do any of that. And the reason for that is I've had enough of that case. I'm going to close this file. I'm moving on to the next one. And it kind of bugs people, but I always tell my associates, fine, go celebrate, but act like you've won a case before. It's not that big a cause for celebrations. Well, you should have won. It was a good case. So they all think I'm mean when I'm saying that. But my point is, it's what you do. You win some, you lose some, and there's no huge reason to celebrate or be sad about it. It is what happens. That's how our system works. And win or lose, the system is still working almost all the time. Sometimes those things you hear about sometimes is an indication the system didn't work in that case, but it almost always works.
What's some of the best advice you've received?
Oh my gosh.
Or that you've given beyond the at least act like you've won a case before?
Isn't that awful?
No, it's true, because you think about through youth sports or whatever it might be, there is somebody on the other side. Right. And not only for that person's, but look professional.
Right.
Look like you think you belong here.
That's right. You fully expected to win that case. I think with respect to litigators, I think the best advice is you cannot take the facts personally. You didn't cause this. You didn't cause these facts. Sometimes we're dealt a good hand of facts, and we look really great. And those are great cases because you can go try those and win them. But sometimes the facts that your client has been dealt are horrific. I can't tell you how many cases I've had where you've had a quadriplegic on the other side, or you've had a brain dead person on the other side, or you've had somebody who is at, 2-year-old level when they should be a functioning adult, and you are dealt with that, you deal with that, and a win in that case is going to be a travesty for people. Not that you shouldn't try to win if the facts support it, but most of the time they don't. And so as a defense attorney, you're going to lose that case. The question is how much. And so you can't connect your self-value with what the facts are that were made by somebody else. You got to go in and do the best you can, keep the verdict down as much as you can. But sometimes your biggest wins are your biggest losses because they should have been much higher. You see what I mean? So for defense attorneys, I could lose a case for $5 million, and it really probably should have been 15, and that's a big win.
That's a good point. That that sometimes there's a range of what a win might be.
That's right.
But as you're saying that, I think when I think about my evolution, both parent, person, wife, you name it, leader, boss, whatever, that. My facts are my facts, your facts are your facts, and try not to connect the value, my value, your value to those facts and or the outcome.
That's right.
Of whatever it might be.
That's right. My husband said one time to me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, the difference in both of your sides is everybody thinks they're reasonable. And that's why you try cases. Everybody thinks they're reasonable. It's not that the plaintiff or the defendant is coming in and trying to get away with something that they think is unreasonable. They have different perspectives and different facts and different explanations and motivations. And so it's not true that they're both reasonable, but who knows which one is reasonable? A 12-person jury. That's who knows.
And you need one of them to convince the others, right? You don't need all 12 of them.
That's right.
So you don't always need to go out and prove to everyone how right you are.
That's right.
You just need enough of that seed in life.
That is right. I love that.
So it certainly sounds to me, as I'm listening, a lot of the things you mentioned just for your success and your world in litigation and trial law really is applicable to just people in life in general. Be who you are, really get to know other people, care about them, not again in a manipulative way, but in a real way, and, you know, a lot of other things. You know, you might make a fool of yourself, but go out there and do it. You know, for you, I think that nonlinear path of psychology to jury selection so be willing to try some different things on the peripheral that might help you be more successful.
Yeah.
It's a lot of good life stuff.
I wish I'd written down everything you just said, because it made a whole lot more sense than anything I said.
Well, the good thing is I got a guy over there who's recording all this and writing some notes, so that's always helpful. And I always go back and listen to these before we release them. But even, I think, some of the big ones at the end, you mentioned most often you're not going to learn as much from the successes as you will from the failures.
Right. I really do think that's true. And I don't know that people acknowledge that as much as we should. Because we're out talk about it,
celebrating right away, like we.
That's right.
Like we haven't been there before, and then we forget to go back and dissect it all. But I think the one that stuck out to me is, you know, don't connect your self values to the facts,
right?
And that people's facts, in addition, you said they have their own set of facts and they feel they're reasonable.
Right.
So how do we be real and communicate in a way where we're respectful of the other people's facts, but also to an extent be able to not commiserate with the losses,
right,
and not connect our value to whatever that situation or outcome is.
That you didn't make to begin with.
Right. And if you were a part of it, you know, again, doesn't knock your self-value if things don't go as you expected or wanted. So I
think that's right.
Good life advice like your parents did. Circling it all back, it wasn't necessarily all about the different law courses you took, but a lot of advice on just how to be successful in life and live life. And a lot of lessons we hear about, a good summary and a good way to learn them through your experience and your success.
Well, I feel like this has been a good therapy session for me.
Well, thanks. You know, it's funny. We do hear that. And I think that's the fun part of being a part of this is people sit back and haven't really either thought about all those things at one sitting.
Right.
And there's maybe a lot that I haven't connected along the way.
Right. Yeah, you're fantastic at this. This is great. You bring out all kinds of fun stuff.
Well, I'm sure, you know, there's some others. Unfortunately, you can't tell us everything. And I'm sure there's some other good tidbits.
Oh, I don't know. I think you've gotten most of it.
So I thank you for being so willing to come on this journey with me to share your story.
Well, thank you for taking me on this journey. This has been a blast, and it's been a great way to start the week.
Well, thank you. And I know others will get out as much out of it as I have. And I look forward to continuing to learn more from you throughout the years. And
me too. And we now have new friends, 2 new friends, each other.
We do.
That's what the goal is.
So don't go to a small town and stay at the hotel. Get yourself out and make new friends.
That's right. That's right. That's what we did today.
We did. So, Debbie, if people are not, again, I think you have mentioned before, so many people find you to get you to work with them or on their cases. But if people did want to find you, what's the easiest way to find you?
Well, you know, my firm name I never give to anybody because it's so hard to spell. It's Reinierson, Seuss, Schnurbush, and Champion. And now, if you started a business with a woman named Champion, don't you think you would have called it something like the Champion Partnership? But we didn't do that. So I just tell everybody, just put in Debbie Champion Attorney, and it all comes right up.
And it does. I can guarantee that.
I don't know why that is, but it is. It does.
Maybe there's, you know what? There's only one Debbie Champion.
That's true.
And
but there are 4 in my hometown. It's true.
Which is interesting since you came here and, different life. But,
that's right.
Again, that just goes back to there's only one you, so be you. So thank you for coming on today and being you.
It's been fun. Thank you very much.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit SheLiftProject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.